Okay, so you've poured weeks, maybe months into your research. You've written the paper, and you're right there at the finish line, the conclusion. But let's be honest, this is where so many amazing papers just fizzle out. They end not with a bang, but with a whimper. Well, we're going to fix that for good.
So, I want you to ask yourself, really, is your conclusion just a rehash of your introduction? Does it feel like you just copy-pasted your abstract and changed a few words? It's such a common trap to fall into, but, the top journals, they expect way more. They are not looking for a boring summary. They're looking for synthesis, for meaning, for significance.
And that gets us to the true purpose of a conclusion. Here's the key phrase. It must add interpretive value. This is your chance to step back from all the data and tell your reader what it all means. It's where you tie everything together, you clarify why your work matters, and you show exactly where your little piece of the puzzle fits into the bigger picture of your field.
To make sure we get this right, we've got a super clear roadmap. We're going to talk about moving beyond just a simple summary, then we'll cover the core principles you have to follow, we'll walk through a 6-step blueprint you can use every time, then we'll cover the common pitfalls to avoid, and we'll wrap up with a final self-check before you hit that submit button.
So, before we get into the how-to, we gotta lay down the ground rules. Think of these as the absolute, non-negotiable laws of writing a scholarly conclusion. Get these right, and you're already halfway there.
First, and this is the big one, every single thing you claim in your conclusion has to be backed up by the results you already presented in your paper. No exceptions. Second, your language needs to be precise and proportionate. This isn't the place for wild, sweeping statements. And a huge one, absolutely no new data, no new analyses, and no new references. The time for that is over. This is about interpretation. And finally, of course, everything has to align with publication ethics.
So what about length? How long should this thing be? Well, a really good rule of thumb is to aim for about 5 to 10% of your total word count. You want it to be concise, right? But it still needs to be substantial enough to do all the heavy lifting we're talking about.
All right, now for the main event. This is the part you've been waiting for. Here is a clear 6-step blueprint that you can literally follow every single time to build a powerful, impactful conclusion.
You'll see there's a really nice, logical flow here. We start small, focused on your study, and we gradually zoom out to the bigger picture. We'll kick off by restating the aim, then synthesize your findings, discuss the implications, own up to the limitations, look to the future, and then stick the landing with a strong final sentence. Let's break each one down.
Okay, step 1. You're going to start with just one single, crisp sentence that reminds the reader of your study's main goal or your central research question. This isn't the time for a big wind-up or a bunch of background info. It's just a quick, sharp anchor to reorient everyone. The aim of this study was to, boom, done.
Next up, you synthesize. And I want you to really hear that word synthesize, not just summarize. You're not making a laundry list of your results. No way. You are connecting the dots, explaining the key patterns, the main takeaways. This is also where you very clearly and explicitly state what your paper's main contribution is. What did you add to the conversation?
So what does a contribution even look like? Well, it could be a few different things. Maybe you've made a theoretical advance, like proposing a new model. Or perhaps you've developed a methodological approach that other researchers can now use. Or maybe, and this is very common, you've provided critical new empirical evidence that fills a known gap in the field. The key is to be specific about what you brought to the table.
Now we start to zoom out. This step is all about answering that giant, blanking question, so what? Okay, you found these things. So what? Why should anyone outside of your very specific niche care? This is where you explain the broader implications of your work.
And this is super helpful because it breaks down that kind of vague idea of implications into 4 concrete areas. You can think about how your work impacts theory, how it might change professional practice, how it could inform policy, or maybe how it should influence education and training. Just remember, your implications have to be a direct, logical consequence of your findings.
I know this can sometimes feel like you're pointing out flaws in your own work, but trust me, it's the exact opposite. Acknowledging your limitations is a huge sign of scholarly strength and confidence. You're just briefly and honestly stating the boundaries of your study. This shows you have a sophisticated understanding of your work, and it also helps prevent readers from applying your findings where they shouldn't.
And those limitations lead us perfectly into the next step, suggesting what comes next. And whatever you do, please avoid that classic, lazy line, more research is needed. Instead, be specific. Use your limitations as a launch pad. Suggest a comparative study,
or trying a different methodology, or maybe a longitudinal study that builds directly on the foundation you just laid.
And here we are, the final sentence. This is your mic drop. You want one short, memorable, powerful statement that reinforces the overall importance of your study. It should give the reader a real sense of closure, but without making it sound like you've said the final word on the topic. It's about leaving them thinking.
So, now that we have the perfect blueprint for what to do, let's flip it and talk about what not to do. If you know what reviewers are trained to look for and the stuff that drives them crazy, you can sidestep all the common traps that get otherwise great papers into trouble.
And this table just lays it out so clearly. You see the common mistakes on the left? Just summarizing, throwing in new data, overstating your impact, making wild recommendations. These are the red flags. On the right, you see the strong approach, adding that interpretive value, being strictly evidence-based, staying proportionate, and deriving implications directly from your results. That's the goal.
Okay, you are almost there. You've followed the blueprint, you've avoided the pitfalls. But before you even think about clicking that submit button, we have one last super important step. It's time for the final self-check.
Seriously, just pause for 5 minutes and ask yourself these questions. Answering them honestly right now can be the difference between getting that dreaded desk rejection versus a really promising revise and resubmit.
So, ask yourself, does my conclusion hammer home why this study actually matters? Does it honestly reflect the scope and the boundaries of what I did? Does it genuinely add that interpretive value we've been talking about? Or is it just a summary in disguise? And finally, is it totally aligned with scholarly and ethical standards? If you can give a confident yes to all four, my friend, you are in great shape.
You know, when you strip everything else away, it all comes down to this single, powerful idea. Your conclusion is your last and best chance to convince your reader that all of this work was important. So don't just tell them what you did one last time, tell them why it mattered. Now go write a great one.